Good morning and welcome to A Better World with Julann and Fran. I'm Julann.
And I'm Fran. And today we have Seth Cutler as our guest. Welcome, Seth.
Welcome.
Hello, hello, Fran, and hi, Julann. Oh, I
And what
just
is
realized you rhyme.
Yeah, look at that.
we do? And what is it that you're doing to make the world a better place?
Well, that's a great question. I feel like there are a lot of things that I do to make the world a better place, but I think the number one thing for me is is being in service. Like when we're being in service of others, I know that sounds like altruistic, but actually, when we're being in service of others, we're actually being in service of ourselves as well. And in order to help others, put your mask on first. Uh, we have to help ourselves and make sure we're in a good place in order to be of service to others. So I feel like I do. I feel like a lot of things I do fall under that category. I am a psychic medium, and I work with clients and do readings. And one of the things I've learned over the years is people ask, well, why do people come see you? And at first I would answer like, well, usually it's about romance or it's about career or finance. But then I've come to learn over the years that may be a part of it, but really what it's about is healing. People come for healing, and that healing could take on a myriad of flavors. It's all ice cream, but sometimes it's vanilla, sometimes it's chocolate, sometimes it's mint chocolate chip. So I feel like I always feel good, like after doing a reading, because I feel like I have helped move a person from where they are to a better place or to the start of a better place. Help shifting the energy, help bring understanding, and with understanding comes healing. And what I love about it is I never know what's going to unfold. Like each person shows up, and it's like a new movie that I get to witness or be a part of, and it's exciting for me. And then what happens is I completely once it's done, like I have no memory of it. It's because it's not my information to keep. I can't even remember where I keep my own stuff. So it's hard. Like if it didn't happen 5 minutes ago, it didn't happen. So that's one of the things that I do.
That's fascinating. When
That
did
is.
you realize that you were psychic?
Mm, I think as a kid, I always knew stuff, but I didn't understand. And I was always drawn to it. Like I was always attracted to the occult, parapsychology, ESP, dreams. Um, Ever since I was little, I just had this draw to it. And then as a young adult, I'd read, do a lot of reading, and occasionally take a class or something. But I was never serious about it. So this is really a crazy story. Um, it happened somewhere between 12 and 15 years ago when I was a young stud. Um, I was at a friend's party, and we were out on her patio, and there was this little table. It was round. It had a red tablecloth and a one candle in the middle. So I was joking with her that it looked like seance. And so we started joking. My dog Lucky wants to
Hi,
say
Lucky.
hi. um, we were joking about it being a seance, and we were joking about this song from the 70s, which was an AM hit for Cher called Dark Lady, where
Mm.
you remember it? Cher goes
Yeah.
to a psychic, and her psychic tells her man's having an affair, and then she realizes her man's having the affair with the
The
psychic.
psychic.
So then Cher gets a gun and she kills them both, and then they're both dead, and she's happy. So we were joking about that song, and I said to my friend, "Ooh, I should do some readings." And then there was a woman in earshot, and she said, "I'd like a reading." So I said, "Okay." Now I thought it was so obvious that we were joking And then I sat down and I looked in her eyes. I'm like, yikes, like this woman is serious. I owe her a reading. So the first thing I did was lower the bar. And like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We'll see. And I did this little reading for her, and it turns out I was like spot on. And I guess she went inside and told a friend of hers, and the friend came out and said, I'd like a reading. I'm like, okay, lower the bar. Again, spot on. And then a third person, and I'm getting names of people in her family and what they do. And then a fourth person, and I'm thinking, gee, I should really quit while I'm ahead, because you could just roll the table, run the table for so long, right? So as we were driving home, I'm like a little like, freaked. And then I remembered every psychic I have ever been to has told me that I was psychic. So then I found a teacher and I studied with her for a year. And then I found another teacher and studied with her for a year. And then she said, okay, we're going to take a break and you have to go out and do 8 free readings just to get experience. And it's one thing to do readings in class, but you have to go out in the world and just tell people you're looking for feedback. And I only wanted to do like total strangers, so it'd be a complete blank slate. But the problem was I didn't know any strangers. So I had my yoga teacher at the time had this big blog, put it on her blog, and I got people local, long distance, and I didn't even know I could do long distance. And from that, I started getting referrals. So it's all been and then it started like coming out of the closet which was much harder than coming out of the homo closet. It was like it's like, who do I tell? And 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 then I would start to do it, and people were like, we'll have to pay you something. I'm like, oh, no. Oh, I have to pay you something. I'm like, okay, $30. I figured for $30, if I suck, you're not going to complain.
$30, right?
Yeah.
Carton
And
of eggs.
exactly. So now I'm worth 2 carton of eggs. So as time went on and I got more secure the best validation is referrals. And basically, I don't really do any promoting, so it's all referral based. So it's kind of nice.
That is
So
nice.
yeah,
That's a cool thing to be able to do.
yeah,
It is.
it is, and it's and sometimes people's loved ones come through. I can't control who comes, but I can communicate for anybody that comes, and it's this. I definitely don't remember them when they're done. However, there's a handful of readings that were like red letter, like I don't know if that's the term, but they were like, I'm gonna remember this one forever. They
Yeah.
were, so yeah, that's how that came to be.
That's wonderful. Do you do anything to prepare for a session?
Mm, drugs? No, joking. I'll take about a half hour, 15 minutes to a half hour to meditate. Now it's interesting. I used to, when I was very young at this, I would like spend like a whole like hour like trying to get, because once someone makes the appointment with me, the communication portal's open, so you don't have to be there in the room, and I already know stuff. So when I was less secure, I would like spend like even during the week, trying to get information. And now I feel comfortable enough with all of my experience that I just need 15 minutes to kind of reset the energy wave, is the best way I can describe it. And
Has it ever happened that you try to sit down with someone and you don't get anything? You can't.
yeah,
Yeah.
that has never happened. Um, some people are harder. Um, and but no, something always comes through. Yeah, something. And what I do is I tell people, prepare your questions, but you're not going to tell me them when you first come in. Really, beyond hello, I don't really want to have a conversation with you, because I want you to be a stranger. I want you to be a blank slate to me. And we do this opening meditation. And then I start bringing them bringing them information that I'm getting for them, which oftentimes is the questions that they came with. By the time we're done with that, I was like, okay, what are the questions do you have? Like, well, you basically answered A, B, C, and D.
That's great.
So yeah, and I started doing it that way because I was a skeptic. Like, am I making this? Like, I'm, you should always have a skeptic eye, and so that was my way of testing myself. Well, funny, like my learning along the way, like I was like, don't speak, and then I felt like I was like the psychic Nazi, like not letting anybody. And then I realized, Seth, these people are coming to you for reading. You have to let them talk, So I was like, so I always jump in as I'm doing the blank slate, and then validate what makes sense. And if things are not making sense, please say that as well. And because I won't cry in front of you. And so the stuff generally flows. Yeah.
That's great. That's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. I noticed when, excuse me, when I watch other psychics, like the famous ones, John Edward and the Long Island medium and the Hollywood psychic, I think it's,
right.
They will often say, okay, your loved one is giving me a particular, like a rose. And when I see that symbol, I know it means this. Do you have certain symbols that you'll get from anyone that always mean the same thing?
Well, the rose generally always means gratitude, love, and thank you. I used to get specific symbols that meant the same thing when I first started out, but not so much. Like, this was interesting. I did a reading yesterday, and really without divulging any specific information, but I was doing the opening meditation, and there's a part in the meditation, the second to last part, where I call on ascended masters and departed loved ones. And a family member of this person came through, and I was like, you can't see it, but this is my knee. I was like doing this, like to my thigh, rather, as I was getting information. And I don't know why I'm doing that, but that's what's happening. And it turns out later in the reading, my client said, that's what my so-and-so used to always do, would sit there and,
Wow.
So it's like that kind of thing. Different loved ones will, or spirit, because sometimes information comes from loved ones, sometimes it comes from spirit, will provide the information. I ask for them to provide it in a way that will make sense to the person I'm reading for, because what might make sense to you, Julann, might not make sense to you, Fran. So, or sometimes they'll tell me like a story in my own life that will kind of paint the thematic or conceptual pictures. Okay, they want me to tell you this about me, because sometimes it's easier to get the bigger picture when it's about somebody else, and you can look at it objectively. So, yeah.
And have you had people that come and say they're looking for something specific? Let's say they had a bad relationship with their mom and the mom passed away. Do you find that you can hone in on one particular thing? Is that something you're able to do, or is it just what comes to you, pretty much?
It's what comes, and sometimes sometimes it's very specific and evidentiary, like there might be some specific examples that the departed loved one will bring through, and which I love, because that's validation. Because
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So one of my earliest readings that I'll never forget, and it was by phone, which I was still like, can I do this by phone? And I've come to learn spirit doesn't care where you are, because we don't connect in the physical plane anyway. Right. And I was doing this reading the week before. These two young kids, they were like 20, boyfriend and girlfriend, came over, and the readings were separate. And when I was reading for the young woman, I was getting like really like intense information about her dad, and I'm like, her dad, like, not good, and I would use a certain word, but we're on a podcast, and I'm like, awful. And then I'm thinking, well, I'm new at this. This is one of the 8 readings that I had to do in the beginning, and like, well, what if I'm wrong? And anytime our ego gets involved, that's when we go astray. And I'm like, well, what if I'm wrong? So I kind of really softened it, and then it turns out her dad was as awful as I thought he was.
Right.
And so I was doing this reading next week, and this is when early on when I mentioned I used to like practice, like try to get information the entire week before, because I was afraid, what if nothing comes? And her dad came through to me during the week, and he was like, I want you to tell, blah, 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 my daughter, this, and this. And he was like, don't chicken out, because I think he saw how I chickened out with this young lady. And when I did this reading for this woman, it was so interesting. Like, I had gotten all the stuff before the reading began. I had like written it all down. And first in the reading, I said, did you do something with your hair? Because they're mentioning they like your hair. And sometimes they'll give silly things like, and she was, I just dyed it or back to its original color yesterday. And then I thought she worked with material. Like I said, do you work with clothing? Because I'm seeing she did. And I'm like, okay. But this is how it's interesting. Sometimes things get revealed. That morning, she had tie-dyed a shirt. So I was like, so then I was talking about different things and about her mother. And prior to the call, they had me change what I was writing and use a green ink. And then it was about this trip to Ireland with her mother, and which they had gone, and it was very monumental in their relationship. And she had asked about her dad, and I was like, we're going to get to your dad, but we've got some other things to talk about. And then her dad came through. I told her, and when I said her dad, she goes, that's exactly how he was, and he was judgmental, and his message was, it wasn't you, it was me. These were my limitations. And I got the best email. She wrote, she'd had this picture of her dad in a box or something. And after the reading, she was able to take it out and put it up. And she felt like there was some healing. And I'm like, that's
great.
That's what, and that's a reading I will never, ever forget. And it was one of my first readings. So,
nice.
Yeah.
You definitely made her world a better place, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's nice to
I hope
release
so.
that stress and
Yeah. Because like to be able to, like, you could feel and sometimes I do energy work with people too. So, and in the initial meditation, I do some energy work with the people to clear energy, and sometimes I could sensorially feel it or see, that it's like the tension, like it's like if you put too much dye on a material and you keep rinsing it, you see the dye dissolve and come off it. And that's kind of like what happens with the angst or the tension or the unhappiness or the uncertainty or the insecurity, whatever it is, and that's why I say, people come for healing.
Yes, yes. I bet a lot of healing happens because so often, especially in the instance of a loved one's death, there are unanswered questions, there are unspoken words, parents might not have ever said that they were proud of a child, but it comes through in a reading, things like that. And do you have a lot of like people in a reading maybe not knowing what you're referring to and then later on contacting you and saying, oh, I know what you mean now?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And I always tell them in the beginning, like I kind of explain how the reading is going to work. And that's why I say it's okay to say if things don't make sense, because sometimes they might make sense later on, or even within the reading, they might get revealed in a different way. And I would say, I've had readings from people and I'm saying, I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And then I'm driving home and it's like 2x4 to the head. Okay. So here's one I'll never forget. Here's a funny story. And he knows I've told this story, so I feel okay to share. It was a new person for me, and I'm driving to the office, and this guy, I don't want to say the name. I'll just make up a name. We'll just say John. That John joins me in the car and I know exactly where I was getting off on the exit and started, talking to me because he was a ex-lover of the person I was about to do a reading for, and they hadn't seen each other for they broke up 20, 30 years ago, and had no contact. It wasn't a bad breakup. They just kind of went their separate ways. And so he comes in and I think I can't start with this. So I need to start with a few smaller things, and then I tell him, and I said, he's passed. He had cancer. He lived in a certain state. And I told him the state. And he's like, well, I didn't know he had passed. I hadn't seen him in, a billion years. And then at the end of the reading, he said to me, when you wake up and you're in that like quasi semi awake sleep, he goes, I hadn't thought about this guy in a million years. And he was like in that state. I said, well, he was very anxious to meet with you because he was talking to me as I was driving over to the office. So he goes, well, I'm going to try to do some research. So the insecurity in me and the ego starts, oh my God, I hope he's dead. And because if he's not dead, like
I don't want to be wrong.
I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud.
Right.
And so he reached out to me about a week and a half later. He did one of those IntelliSearches things. He found he did live in the state where I said he did pass of cancer. And there were some other things which I can't remember. And so I was like, thank God he's dead. And so he comes once a year for a reading. And so we joke about, like, I've told him that, I was like so happy. And yeah, that's, so yeah, as far as things don't make sense, sometimes I get, it's like, maybe I got this wrong, you kind of, maybe I'm not hearing it right, but most than not, things like will make sense. Or sometimes I'll say something early on in the reading and it's not connecting. And as the reading is going on and the specifics are coming up, I'm like, now they want me to go back to the beginning of the reading. Remember when I said blah, 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 that's what, this is.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's, when I first retired, I was an educator, teacher, and an administrator. I thought, oh, I really wanted to be big, want to be big, and but then I realized that's not what I wanted. That was ego, and it was like, I didn't want it to become a full-time job. I didn't want, so I feel like I get enough clients. And sometimes I get a lot, and sometimes not a lot, and I'm happy with both. Like also this month, I've just been like reading after reading, and then there'll be a month where it's like, the energies, people aren't calling, so it's just interesting how that works.
Yeah.
I always say reading, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just gonna say, I always tell people readings happen when they're supposed to.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
If somebody comes back to you regularly, like you mentioned that person who comes to you once a year, does a new loved one come through each time?
Not necessarily, and a loved one doesn't always come through. Loved ones will come through when there's a reason for them to come through. But that was another thing in my journey. Like I've had people who wanted to come back in 2 weeks, and I'm like, well, it'll take some time,
Right.
Now, if I was a shy friend, like, yeah, pay me. But no, I'm like, no, take some time. I gave you a lot of information. Part of that was true, and the other part was true for me was my own, like, well, they were just here. I don't know what else I would tell them. But you know what? Some people need to come often because it is kind of like there's some heavy stuff going on and they need layers of release. Yeah. And different information will come. And I always tell people, well, I remember those 1 or 2 specific readings I shared with you. I generally don't. And so I always tell people to come back. I just want you to know, like, what you told me about what was going to happen. I always say I'm not in the business of predicting the future, although sometimes that works its way in. I'm like, what you said was exactly what happened, whatever, validating. I'm like, great. And then I'm like, I just have to tell you, I, Seth, have no memory of it, Right. But when we go in, some of that might come back because now I'm connecting my spirit with your spirit, and they'll be, oh, okay, now I know. And same thing like when I read for people I know. I mean, think about it. You know somebody, you probably know as well as you know somebody, maybe 4 to 10% of them. There's a whole life story about everybody that there's no way, no matter how much, even with your spouses, it's like, you don't talk nonstop all the time. You have a lot of thoughts and feelings that they just live within us, So even when I read people I know, it's like I clear the energy of what I know so that I can bring in the stuff I don't know and what's important for them.
And I can validate that because I came to you for a reading quite some time ago. Feels like it was at the beginning. And
early.
There were things you said about loved ones of mine that had passed that I never would ever have mentioned to you. I wouldn't have mentioned the person. One of my aunts came through, and you were saying, I'm getting the letters M, G, D, and L. And at first I thought, you're probably thinking there's something weird about getting so many letters, but her name was Magdalene. We called her Aunt Madge, but her real name was Magdalene. So I was like, I know exactly who this is. And it's not at all surprising that she's the first person who was like, listen to me, because that was her personality in life. She was a life of the party kind of, get up on a table and dance in front of everybody, wear all this jewelry. She was my mom's only sister, and they couldn't have been more opposite. My mom was very humble and quiet and, don't pay attention to me. And my aunt was like, just everybody, if she
The life of the party.
absolutely. If she had been in your company, Seth, suddenly she would have had difficulty walking and she would have had to hold your arm. And only your arm. Like even if there were a bunch of women and you around, she would have had to hold because you were the guy there. She was very much give me all the attention.
I love that.
Yeah. So you did a very accurate reading. And I can't imagine by the time I came to see you, she had been deceased already for at least a decade. So I can't imagine that there would have been any reason I would have ever mentioned her to you. So
Right.
you did a very legitimate reading. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you. That always blows my mind because it's like I remember when you said I did a reading for you, I remembered that's right, I did. I didn't really remember that. And I have absolutely no memory of that story. But it's like what doesn't stay with me, like it always amazes me that reading was a long time ago, and you still have all that specifics. Like you still sit with it, like I've left it, but so that gives me the ooze, the psychic ooze. Yeah.
Well, that shows you how much it means to people that you give them something that makes such a difference that they remember it, so many years later. That's a nice thing.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Now you mentioned when you were driving to the office, a spirit came into your car. Do you do things if you're going to be, say, in a crowd of people at a party or something, do you do things to like close yourself off from receiving? Yeah.
Yes. When I was very young and didn't understand any of this, and I didn't even know the word empath at the time, and I would go into a mall and I would leave like wiped out because I felt like I was picking up people's emotional, not the specifics of their story, but I was picking up people's emotional spaces, and I would like always be wiped out. So yeah, when I go into crowds, or events, like it's like I envision this little light switch in the back of my head, turn it off. When I agreed with Spirit to do this, because they wanted me to retire a couple of years earlier than I did, and I said I can't afford to. And I said, but here's the thing, like I only want to get messages when someone's made an appointment. Like I don't want to go to the bank or the grocery store and see people's people. I just want to do my business, Now, sometimes people do sneak through or I'll get hits on people, but for the most part, like that's my agreement, Or people will say, I'm a little nervous, but I feel like you're reading me. I'm like, so my joke is, are you paying me? And they go, no. I said, then I'm not reading you.
That's nice that you can turn it on and off. I mean, that's a great thing.
I know people who've come to see me who feel like they're psychic and they can't turn it off, and I work with them on getting them to turn it off because that would make me nuts.
Yeah,
that
that's
would drive
exhausting.
me. Yeah,
especially if it's sad. If it's all happy things, it's not so bad. But if if somebody's carrying something heavy and you're getting that, and you're always getting that, and then
yeah. I try to remain as shallow as possible when I'm out in the world.
That's okay.
Shallow but proud.
You're deep when it matters.
When it matters, yeah. But the rest of the time,
nice.
Everything
That's how
goes over
everybody
my
should
head.
be. There'd be less trouble in the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you knew when you were a kid that if you would go to a mall or something, you'd come home feeling wiped out. Do you know around what age you realized that was being an empath?
I think I first learned the word empath somewhere in my 30s. which is like a really long time ago.
No.
It was like 30 years ago,
Yeah.
or more. Um, uh, um, and when I learned the word, that's when I understood, oh, that is why that was happening. So, and when in doing readings, like at the end, I have to cut the cords, and
Right.
selenite, which is a stone, is really good for cutting cords with people, even positive cords. We want to have, when we have interactions, we have cords, but then we want to clear them, so that we're not, you know, you're not
Carrying
living
them
inside
around.
of me, and I'm not living inside of you. And I always joke with my clients, we'll cut the cords because otherwise you'll be stuck with me 24/7, and then you have to get a restraining order, and that's hard to explain. That's hard to explain to the judge. Why is this guy in my
Right.
head? He won't leave me alone. So
Yes, that's fine. It's not only hard to explain to the judge, it's hard to explain to the spirits too.
yes,
Well,
exactly,
I'll tell you what,
exactly.
you picked up on being an empath a lot earlier than I did.
Uh-huh.
I didn't start hearing people describe themselves as empath until probably, oh, 15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until 2015, and I thought, oh, this is that thing that you are that makes you special that I'm not. And it wasn't until 2015 I was getting my massage certification, and we're watching a DVD of a woman who was very uncomfortable. She was narrating what she was doing, but I just didn't want to watch it and I didn't understand. And somebody who was in the class with me who had described herself as an empath said, I don't want to watch this anymore. It's making me uncomfortable. And it was like a light bulb went on. So this was only like 2015 and it's only 10 years later. And I haven't only understood the word empath for 10 years. But
Mm.
so many people say that they're an empath as though that's an unusual thing. It's my opinion that because when you're young enough, you actually feel your parents' emotions as a little kid. That's why if two parents are not getting along and they say, "Oh, but we never fight in front of the baby. She doesn't understand." The baby understands,
Yes.
The baby doesn't realize that the baby understands, but the baby's picking up all those feelings. And I think unless you're raised to be an extreme or even maybe a narcissist, a sociopath, or a psychopath, you're going to be empathic. You're going to be feeling other people's feelings, whether you know it or not.
Which is a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
because it connects us, and we have empathy. I know some people think empathy is a bad word, but we have empathy. Um, and when we have empathy and when we care about people, we treat them better. And that's really, ultimately it's about love. When I talked about the readings about healing, it's about healing, it's about love, because that's really what we're put here for. And it's interesting you tell that, because in the back recesses of my brain, I feel like in a recent reading, something came through to that where it was, what was it? It was whatever the situation was, which I have no memory of, but the concept of it was, your kid will pick that up. Your kid's going to feel that, and that's an impetus for change, right? Because you want your kids to not feel crummy things,
Right.
and we have physiological DNA with our parents, our relatives. We have psychic DNA. We have legacy DNA in our family, things that have just played out over time. So those connections, yeah, unless you're void, or as the prototypes that you mentioned, Fran, we're going to feel these things, and it's the more we understand it, I think the better. Yeah, the better it is to hold people in our hearts and have healthier relationships.
I think so. I think we can make the world a better place by being compassionate and empathetic and,
Treasure.
saying, yeah, I wouldn't want to feel badly, so I'm going to do what I can to make that person feel good.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I feel like, when I look back at periods in my life where I have been in a slump or a dump or a funk, or just having the blues, um, the best way I've learned to get out of it is by doing something for somebody else. It's like, okay, that makes me better. I've spent half of my life as an elementary school teacher. So that's being of service to kids, and another half of my life teaching teachers. That's being of service to teachers and kids. So I just feel like when you get out of your own wallowing, and not to deny it or minimize if there are specific things, like, because you have to deal with, life throws us things that it's important for us to work through. Because if we don't, life keeps throwing us the same garbage. So, but being of service to others is the best way for us to feel good about ourselves, and not like, look at me, I'm a mensch, I'm this, that's ego, right? But it's again, the empath, the caring, the empathy. That's so funny. I just now made the connection between the word empath and empathy, like literally, like right now. I'm a little slow. Okay.
Well, I think it's especially beautiful that someone like you is so giving and serving and kind, because you're gay, and the world has not been very nice to you in many instances just because of that. And yet you are so, you and Tony have people over your home all the time. You're very welcoming, you're very warm, you're very the opposite of the way that you may have been treated a lot. You weren't even allowed to be married for a lot of your relationship legally.
Right.
And it's just amazing to me that you can be so giving and so kind, and so especially thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you so much. If I can make a connection to that, so like, I really feel like when you look at, Black people, African American people, like their journey, like talk about the world not being kind. And I always feel like, who's who who takes over and who's in charge? Black women. I feel like, they have, I mean, it's never good to generalize the whole population, but in general, it's like it just seems like Black women have strength and and really like put it out there, and I feel like make the world a better place. And you think like, wow, like this country has a history of not treating you well, being a woman, being African American, but it's like I just had to make that connection on a broader picture. I feel like the conceptually on that, it's when you know what it's like to be marginalized or targeted or unsafe or to have to hide. If you're in touch, then I feel like that's a really good motivation, kind of something I think you said earlier. It's like, I know what this feels like, so I don't want you to feel that. What can I do to elevate and lift you? And so, yeah.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much.
And I always say at the end of our episodes, if there were one message you'd want the people, our audience, to take away, what would it be? But you've said so many great things, and you know what I mean? Like, to be of service, but one more time.
I would say something I probably didn't say is laugh. Like, find the joy, find the humor. Here's the thing, there's a lot of not good things going on right now. And I have to admit, I'm a junkie for the news, and I watch way too much of it. But don't let anybody take away your joy. No matter, it's like, I had my mom died of cancer very early. Well, she was 58, I was like
early.
30 years early.
Yeah.
And I still remember we were waiting for the biopsy to come back. And we finally got it back, and the liver cancer wasn't good. And we sat in silence, and then we turned on the TV, and Oprah was on, or some talk show like Oprah was on. And they had the chyron, like who they're speaking to. And I was like, people with terminal illnesses. And we all just laughed. And I think my mom laughed the hardest, So like, even if you have cancer, which is a terrible hardship, like that doesn't have to be 100% of your life. You still have to find joy. When what's going on in our life, don't let them take away your joy. Don't find the humor, laugh, because laughing is healing. And
It is.
don't,
Perfect.
take the work seriously, but we don't have to take ourselves seriously.
Very much. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And if would you like people to be able to contact you? And if so, how can they do that?
Oh, sure. I have a website. It is Seth, Seth with Spirit, one word, SethWithSpirit.com. And you can find me there. And if you can reach out to me, email me. And if you do, just let me know that this is how you found me. I always like to know how people find me because I generally don't promote. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being our guest today. This was a
pleasure.
an enlightening episode. This has been another episode of A Better World with Julann and Fran and our special guest, Seth Cutler. And please like and share this video, and please join us again. Thank you.
Bye.